All right, everybody, let's begin. Hi, I'm Brett, and the young man that I'm about to introduce was, and I'm not even halfway shitting you about this, the School Sucks podcast listener that I was dreaming about. And then one day, and I started to think that the person that I was looking for didn't exist. And it's interesting, since I connected with Nick, I've actually found a lot of people like this. But we first interacted in 2014. Nick called into Free Talk Live, and I was hosting. And he said, I want to drop out of school and become a yak herder. And I think I was on with Ian, and we tried to give him the best advice we could. We didn't know much about yak herding, but that was, it's just amazing to think that that was 4 years ago. Nick was 14, 15 years old, and we had like a 20-minute conversation, and I wanted to know everything about him. So he came on my show, I went on his show, we talked about philosophy, we made a self-education plan, and this is only like within the first year. And then we stayed up all night together at PorkFest doing a marathon radio show in 2016. In 2017, I went out, Thaddeus Russell and I met Nick and his dad, the schoolmaster of the school Nick dropped out of to pursue yak herding, for Vietnamese food. And then tomorrow, we're going to be on a boat together in Detroit, chaperoned by Mike, because we're both young guys. So it's been an amazing experience getting to know this young man, and I'm so proud of everything that he's accomplished, and I'm very, very flattered and excited to have him as a listener to my show, and I'm excited to hear what he's going to say today. So everybody, Nick Hazelton.
Thanks, Brett. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Nick Hazelton. I wanted to talk to you guys about something cool today, but I've been having a hard time thinking about it. I've been doing my farm work, and I'm like, geez, I could talk to these guys about farming, but most of these people don't know about, the details and why I'm interested. I'm working on shit like, how do I get the most nutrients into my hay? And most people aren't going to be really interested in how carbs work with the ruminant system, right? But then I thought about, well, I could talk about philosophy, and I thought, geez, these guys know a lot about what I know already. And I was thinking, and it was funny because I was thinking of some stuff to talk to you about, and I was listening to Luis and CJ especially. These two hit some stuff on critical thinking, and just kind of taking control of your life that I've found really valuable. And I don't want to talk about that so much today, because I think they already hit it and you already got that from them. But I want to tell you about, I think what I have to bring is, I'm somebody that's grown up kind of with these ideas of libertarianism. Since I was 12, I've been interested in these things, and since I've been probably, about 15 was really when I started working with people in these circles and starting to talk to some of you folks. And I think I've had an interesting life because of it. I don't know, a yak farmer, that's different, right? But there's just a lot of things that I think I've found in my life that have been useful, that I've really pulled out of you folks and these ideas. And I think that we really have something here with a culture that promotes freedom, and really the big thing is self-responsibility, I think, and really taking a look at your life and saying, I'm in charge here, and I'm gonna do something about it. And then you have the opportunity to make a difference. And I think that's what I've done. So I've got a little bit of notes to keep me on track, but I don't have a whole lot to say. I thought I'd open it up for some discussion at the end. But so yeah. But I think that and particularly the things I've pulled out of libertarianism and libertarians is really like if we're going down into the meta, right? It's about learning. Like what I see from a lot of you folks is you guys are actively trying to learn. You're here sitting at talks and you're here working on things, and you didn't get to anarchism by being born there. At least at least most probably, right? But you've thought about it, and even if you were born, you've thought about it because you're kind of forced to by those people around you. Because there are a lot of people that think critically and think about, well, geez, what matters here, and what are we trying to do in this world? And you realize, okay, the government's not helping out any of this, and that's where we kind of start to have a common ground, I think. But it goes deeper than that for sure. Like it's a lot about like, I'm curious, and I want to know what's real. I want to know what's true. I want to know what's right to do in my life, and it's a lot about kind of figuring out like how do you learn, like, and everybody's along on these different kind of paths of learning, these things, but we're all somewhere there, and I think that's kind of special because I don't see that a lot where I'm from. Like, there's a lot of people who are interested. I live in near Corvallis, Oregon, which is a university town. Oregon State's there, and so there's a lot of like academics and such. So it's not like people are stupid, right? But there's not the same desire for freedom, and I'm really curious, where does that come from? So I try to turn around to myself and figure out, well, why did I want freedom? And I don't really know, man. I didn't like to be told what to do. And so I wonder sometimes, like, I've talked to some people here, and I think that's, like, I wonder how much of it is you can be brought into it versus you're already kind of starting there. And it's an interesting question. I don't know how to answer, but I just thought it's something to think about, and I'd like to encourage people to think about how did you get here at least, and how much of it mattered on something that you had before. Like, where does that curiosity come from? Like, that's what got me started. Was I was thinking about, well, geez, how do things work? And I was listening to the people around me talk, and I was lucky that I had some family members interested in politics, and then I was lucky to just have this desire I'm going to figure it all out. And I wonder, like, how does that relate? So I'd like to, after this, I've got some more things to say, but that's one of those things I'd like to hear from you guys during this time, is I'd like some of you guys to come up, and I'd like to hear, because I'm curious. Like, this is about learning from me. And the main thing I'm really trying to get out of this is the kind of the cultural principles. Like, there's stuff underlying a lot of the things that we do and we believe and why we come together, and I'm really interested in how can we recreate that, because I'm trying to do that in my life in Oregon. And I haven't figured it out. I'm working with a lot of things that I've learned, and I think some of the real main things that I think people in this group and in libertarianism and especially anarchism have is first the respect of people. Like, you have to understand that everybody's their own person, and you don't get to control them. You can get upset with them and all this kind of stuff, but you can't make them do things. And that's really important to have in your mind, because there are a lot of people that I know who think they can make people do stuff, and it doesn't work. They try, and they get burnt out. If they're doing it in a positive way, they end up getting burnt out, and then at the worst, they don't have any friends, and that's too bad. But I think that some other things would be. Let me pull out my notes. I lost my train. But I think that. As a culture, we do share that individuality, and that's where a lot of things come from, man. And I think that that's important. I'm thinking about, how do you teach people that when they're in a school system that's not gonna, you're not really treated as an individual. And some places are a little bit better. It's not black and white, right? There's some systems that try to make your education more centered to the student. But how do you get people? Because that's one thing. But how do you get people to really take advantage of their own mental faculties and be like, hey, I'm the one that's here in my life, right? These people are here too, but you aren't really doing things for me, like you aren't helping me with the yak farm. I'm the guy that wants to make that happen, right? And so that's with everybody's life, but I think a lot of people don't have that, hey, I can't rely on other people. And it's not necessarily that, because I like the idea of community, and it's good to rely on other people to an extent, but you can't have people be in charge of your dreams, right? You can't have people be in charge of what you want to do. And I see a lot of kids my age stuck in, like my friends just graduated high school, and they don't know what they want to do, because they got this freedom, but they don't know how to handle it. So they're not, they're having some fun right now, but most of them haven't, they're not ruining their lives at least. But a lot of people are just kind of going down an aimless path because they didn't stop and think, okay, hey, I get to decide. And if they did, I don't think they took it to the point of really taking ownership. Because I think it's a different thing to recognize an idea. Like I recognize a lot of ideas that, I don't know, I think with individuality especially, I learned the lesson a long time ago when I was 14, right? I'm an individual anarchist. Like that's what I believe in. But as I did things throughout and even now, like I realize I get caught up in like group dynamics. Like I fall for peer pressure all the time. Like I don't know, like I started smoking tobacco recently, and that's a terrible thing. I don't like how it feels. But it's an interesting thing, and I realize like I can see these things, and I guess I'm trying to figure out like what's the point I'm trying to make here. Sorry. I think the point I'm trying to make is that there are people in this culture do realize individuality, and I think a lot of you guys take self-ownership. And I'm trying to make the differentiation between really believing that and actually, like, I guess, owning it. Like, how do you know that you're really in charge of yourself? And I think that's a really hard thing to figure out, because there are a lot of emotional things that block us from doing the things that we want. And it's really hard to figure out how to get over them. And there's a lot of tools. And this is why I really like this community, because especially these folks here in the Midwest, I feel like, and these circles are very interested in the things kind of beyond the non-aggression principle and economics, like this interest in emotional resiliency and really figuring out, like, how do we raise kids to promote this culture? And that's kind of where it starts. How do you raise good kids, but how do you make sure that you can heal those wounds that systems.
Hey Nick, with how young you were when you started your first podcast and how long you've been doing it and how well you are known among like our circles at least, have you had other like young like teenagers and stuff reach out to you about either podcasting or about the philosophy itself?
Yeah, definitely. Not very many, but I had a kid from, this was back when I was like 16. I think he was 14, so he's, whatever. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but yeah, there's been people that have, I don't know about come to these ideas through me, but there have been a few young people that have done and started some things that I helped out. I don't know if I want to say names because I don't think many of them are doing similar stuff now, and I haven't asked permission, and they're all probably under 18. But not very many. I think it's like probably 3 people that have really helped start podcasts. And most, I guess the most I've ever really got to interact with more libertarians my age and younger would have been, it was a Facebook group called High School Libertarians. And there's a few kids in there who are doing some really interesting stuff. And I'd be interested to hear from Ritter. I didn't get to talk to you much, but I'd be like, I know that people who have these desires really have a desire to do something different. Like you're doing something interesting if you're interested in freedom, I feel like. And there are a lot of young people around, like a lot of these folks that I was interacting with in that group went into Praxis. If you're familiar with School Sucks, you should be familiar with that program. And they do some very interesting things. And there's a lot of freedom-oriented people heading that direction into the kind of alternatives to college, as that's kind of what Praxis is. Does that answer your question, Shane? Lost him over there. Cool. All right.
How's it going, dude?
Good.
So I was trying to piece together what stood out to me, the self-mastery thing, and what brings people to, we're so motivated by all this stuff that we are here camping and it's raining outside, that is not comfortable, but we're here anyway and we're having a good time.
This is nothing in Oregon, man.
Yeah, no, and you're out there on the
sprinkle.
yak farm. You got to be wet 80% of the time at least. And they have glittery vampires. That's right.
That's right.
Very sexy glittery vampires. Yes. Oh man.
Yeah, we do have the Goonies. I saw the Goonies house for the first time recently, and I don't need to go off on a story about that, but they don't let you get very close.
Yeah, I would imagine it's a very sacred landmark.
So sorry to interrupt, man.
No, it's cool. So I'm curious. I think the thing that kind of came to mind as I was digesting that was I feel like there's these couple of levels. I'm sure there's much more detail to that, but there's like the ideas of I don't like to be taxed and I want to be able to do what I want with my body and I want to be able to get a piece of land and do what I want with that. Feels like it's this like cloak or this clothing that can have this appeal of that looks like I want to wear that. I want to like look like that. I want to be that person and project that out and own that. And I feel like that's valuable and I think that it's attractive to a lot of people and that's how like the slipstream that gets you into this sort of sphere of thinking and being. But then I think there's another level underneath that's for me at least, it's more about I just want to be a good person. Mm-hmm. And I think by doing that, I'll be happy. And I think that will then like, I will be satisfied with life, during and after, or during and at the end, maybe after, we'll see. And yeah, so I think there's these couple of levels and I think it's interesting to me in the last couple of years, this is the first time I've been to anything where the majority of people call themselves libertarian or anarchist, or like that's even a thing in the air. Mm-hmm. In like half a decade, maybe. I went to Pork Fest a couple of times. And for me, like a lot of that was I liked these ideas and I got into them when I was a teen and my dad's libertarian. And there's a lot of shiny stuff with that felt like it had some substance a little bit more than like, there's a lot of shiny stuff in American football. But also like at the end of the day, we're just hooting and hollering and it's a good time, but like you're not necessarily going to be a better person because you can repeat like back in 1979, it was this Super Bowl and these people played and Joe Namath, whatever. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I think the more important thing is that personal mastery is that what does it mean to live a good life and how do I figure that out? But I don't know, I think there's this play between, that's a lot harder. It's harder to, I don't want to fucking shovel yak shit or whatever the hell you do on the farm. Yeah. That's hard work and it sucks. And you can figure out a way to make it enjoyable and like, this is what I'm doing and this is like an important part of me mastering this task I don't want to do and being okay with that is part of learning how to be a good person. But I don't know that necessarily everyone wants to really get there and do that work.
Sure.
And yeah, I'll stop talking now.
Sure. Well, I think you hit on something interesting. It's like the play between kind of get better, you know, adapt or optimize. You know, do you make your life so you don't have to scoop yak shit, or do you just start enjoying scooping yak shit? And that, you know, so like for me, I could try to engineer a way that I'm not gonna do that. Like I'm not gonna have to deal with fecal matter from animals, but that's really hard and it's not worth my time. So like I have to adapt. But there's other situations where I'm like, you know, let's figure out how to optimize stuff. And it's even like, it's not even like in the necessarily the real world, but those things like, do you let go of certain mindsets and feelings that you get, because they're helpful, but maybe they're not as helpful. But I think that, yeah, there's a play there. I think you touched on it. And I think that you were also talking about just being a good person. And I think that's a important thing is like you have to, and everybody has this in them. Like you have that play between like, fuck this shit, I don't want to do it. Like whatever it is, like I don't want these people here and I don't want to deal with them. And then you have like, hey, I love everybody and let's do a cool thing. Like everybody's got that play between, and you're usually somewhere in the middle, right? And you have to kind of find that balance of like, what do you truly desire? Like, do you truly desire to have a shitty life? No, then don't be shitty. Like that's a really simplistic way to say things, but you kind of know, I think, like when something's gonna feel bad, like it's gonna feel bad, and maybe you have to learn that. Like I've learned a lot of things, and I think this is gonna be a good time or whatever. This will be fun, and then you know the next day or even 2 hours later, I'm like, nah, that was fucking stupid. shouldn't have done that, right? But I think it really, you have to have the desire to come back to, yeah, what is, and I don't, this is an issue for me because it's like morality, and I don't know if I believe in that. Like, what is the good thing to do? But I really think it has to do with like just follow that feeling that feels good, you know? So you have to like, and it's, I don't know, does that kind of answer your question about, or your thoughts or anything? It's good.
I think there's substance in there. I don't know that I had a question or more than just bullshit on microphones and cameras.
That's good.
So I think though, the thing that I'm curious about is this interplay between, I think like a really solid example in this sphere is like, there are people who come to these things and they're cool people and I'll hang out with them and they're nice, but really they're like looking to trip nuts, and this is a place in the woods with cool people to do it. And they'll talk about like, yeah, the government kind of sucks and taxation isn't fun and like all this stuff, but really like the heart of it for them, like the emotional connection for them is just they kind of want to get wild and have a good time, and that's great. And those people, like, happy to have them here, and if that's what you're about, like, do it. But I think there is, for me, like, that, I think that's a draw. But to me, I think the more important for me, for sure, and I think like if we're looking to have an effect on positively on society and the world, like it's important to step beyond that and say that can be a thing that can draw us in, and that can be a thing that we have a good time together. But like, I know people might be here or there on Jordan Peterson, but like fucking clean your room, like get your shit in order and like do something. And that's hard to do. But it's important that you do that hard stuff, because that's how the actual change happens for you. And you made the world better just by making your life better. Sure. And that's how you become the kind of person who people are like, damn, that Nick Hazelton dude, I kind of want to live like him. And he talks about this libertarian stuff. So what's that about? And let me learn. And like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's interesting. Like to me, like there's a couple things there. Like the reason I really like this festival is because I like the community, and that's what I like. Like I don't want to talk about activism. I don't want to, like I'll talk about the government. I'll throw my things in, and I've got opinions and stuff that I like to share too. But I like hanging out with folks, and I think this is why I like this festival. And I also like I've been talking to a lot of the farmers here, and we're just talking stuff about how do you do certain things, and how do we do it, and it's just really fun to compare. And that's part of it, is like, that's why I like a lot of people in this group, is I think pretty much all of you are up to something interesting. And maybe that's with everybody. I just had like pretty much almost everybody I've met in general and had decent conversation with. They've been interesting, but I do feel like there's stuff going on here that are important. And I think that, I wonder, like today, I didn't talk anything about psychedelics today, and I'm a big fan of them, and I think they've made a difference in my life. But some things just aren't as important. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think about what you said, and like the play there, like there is like that, I don't know, like it's like, I guess for me, what I've dealt with when I'm trying to spread these ideas is, at least I don't think that I'm very effective at just telling people shit and trying to get you to be into it. Like what I find is that I get a better result when I put in the work. I don't say anything about what I'm doing, and then I show it, and people are like, oh, cool, that's really neat. And that way, like, I get to work on my stuff. I don't have to interact with so many people, and I don't have to have so much feedback. But then I get to be the example of, like, if somebody was watching, like, this is how Nick got here. And I'm like, it frustrates me so much, like so many of my friends, I grew up in a small town. I know like most of my friends I've known for at least 10 years, and like a good number of them my entire life. And like what frustrates me so much is that they don't get how great I am. It makes me so upset sometimes. But like over the last few years, I've really learned, like, they've seen me at my worst. Like most of you guys, I don't think any of you guys have really seen me when I'm done with yak farming. Like that, I get there. Like I was not that far from being like, I'm really fucking upset right now, and I don't want to do this shit. Like, but you have to keep going. So anyway, but like not even like a month ago, I was having a couple days where like my tractor's not working and animals are out and I can't do the things that I was supposed to do this week to get ready for my market. And man, I get upset and I get snippy and stuff. And so they know that I can do that and I can be a dick. Like I can just be mean, and it's unfortunate, and I'm working on that. And I continue to do that, and I'm getting a lot better, but I think I've really changed. Like I really noticed that at 15, and so the point I'm trying to make is like I'm finally starting to get some of my friends to be like, okay, Nick is up to some interesting shit, and I definitely was not because I talked to them in class about how we should try and organize society. You know, it didn't come from that. It was from me doing things and getting results that they could see. You know, they saw like, oh, people want me to be on their podcast. They saw it on Facebook, you know, and then they learn a little bit, and like they found out like, oh, School Sucks is kind of a bigger show. Like that's kind of interesting. And this professor from wherever he's from, Thaddeus Russell, you know, he like that's an interesting thing. So I'm definitely getting some people to be interested in it, and I think what I was trying to pull out of there is that really what's important is that you become the shining example, right, of your ideas. Like don't, it's hard. Like it's really hard to even be consistent, I think, on most things. And I don't think you should ever beat yourself up over not being the shining example because like I let that get to me where I'm like, nah, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I've got a lot to learn about farming. I've got a lot to learn about life. And a lot of the time I feel like, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like I have some tools to use and I'm getting way better at like applying certain things and I'm learning every day. Right. But it's hard. So I think my point would be is that, be the example, do these things that are impressive to you, find the people that are, impressed with that as well and make that your community, right? Like do great things and find the people that are doing those great things as well. Like I don't know. What's a good example of how I've done that? I don't know, but I think that's kind of the idea is like, at least look to those people. Like you guys, you know, I've been able to, I'm trying to think of like in the local way, but like online, like I've met a lot of people. Like I'm lucky I have a mastermind group of some really high level folks that probably you guys know, and it's a mastermind, so we can't say anything, it's secret. And it's really interesting to be able to do that and really talk shop with people who are interested in the stuff that you are. And I think that's the most important thing is just don't. Just do what you want to do and find the people that are doing those things too and be a cool person with them, and then they will like you, and then you will make an influence and they will make an influence on you, and your life will hopefully be good if these are decent people, and you got to learn how to differentiate that, but that's on you.
Or the yaks.
No, I think that's not on the yaks, but it's, yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.